Welcome back to the Brain Trust. This is episode 72, Geopolitics. Nikki Haley resigns before World War III, and the deep state is in a tizzy right now. I got my co-host with me, Lionel.
Hello, how you doing, everyone?
As well as Complex Design.
What's good, y'all? What's good, gentlemen?
We'll get straight into the docket. We'll go from the first article, which is actually a video. If you look at the docket in the description, it'll show you that there's a video from RT, and that video. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this video that we're going over right now is based on the MiG-31 fighter jet made by the Russian Federation. This is a Soviet era fighter jet that was designed to go into stratosphere, so basically the edge of space and between Earth and space itself. And this jet was designed to outrun cruise missiles as well as take down satellites and any incoming missiles coming from outer space, because at the time this was designed, it was really based off of this concept of Star Wars. So with Nixon and I forget the Russian president at the time. It wasn't Khrushchev. I forget the Russian president at the time, but basically they were talking about having these intergalactic battles, that the war would actually take place in space, and this Russian MiG fighter jet was designed around this whole entire concept of taking out satellites, taking out cruise missiles. It's faster than a cruise missile, and it's actually one of the fastest planes still available to this very day, and it's over 30 years old. It has a speed of 3,000 kilometers per second, and it has a range of something like I think like 2,000 kilometers, if I remember correctly, which is a long way. It's almost the size of the United States, if not further, without refueling. And it does have refuel capabilities. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's still a relevant piece of engineering that is still being used with the Russian Federation, for protecting its airspace. And the closest thing that you probably can have to it was a what do they call that? A U-2. I think it was a U-2 at the time. The Americans made a plane called the U-2 that was used for surveillance purposes, but it didn't carry any artillery. But this plane, the MiG-31, was designed just around taking out U-2 bombers, U-2 surveillance planes, B-2 bombers, as well as satellite technology. And I'm referencing satellite technology because in order for you to take out a satellite, you have to be pretty high. In terms of flying in the sky, there is nothing above you at that point. And these special helmets that they use, make sure I turn off the sound. These special helmets that they use are basically space helmets, because when you reach that certain altitude, and I believe that's maybe 26 kilometers up, something like that. I forget the exact number, but basically, if the higher you go, the harder it is for your body to breathe, because the heat coming from in between space and Earth is so hot that it boils your skin, and it boils your fluids in your body. So they have these special suits that they use to get on these planes.
That was gonna be my first question. Is that Now, are they utilizing some sort of special like spacesuit, flight suit of some kind? Because when you're flying like literally like what's that? Was that ionosphere or the latter end
Like a
of the
stratosphere.
atmosphere?
Of course.
Stratosphere, right?
Stratosphere.
Stratosphere, and then right on into the realm of space. I mean, I would imagine that you would need something more than just the prototypical Air Force grade flight suit. I'm imagining something akin to a spacesuit.
And
Yeah, they actually use silk. They actually use silk pajamas. It's
wow.
interesting that they use silk pajamas because it makes it easier to slip the suit on.
And the bottom of the stratosphere is around 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles, or 33,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So they wear silk pajamas to easier to. Is that the sole purpose of the silk pajamas? Not that's
The silk pajamas
actually.
make it easier. It cuts down on time for you to get into your suit. So I think it cuts down like on 5 to 10 seconds of time. So they're saying that it should take less than 90 seconds for you to get into your suit and get onto the plane.
And these suits that they wear, these MiG 31 fighter jets can pull a lot of G's. Am I right?
Correct.
So the suits, allow. Okay, well, so the suits that they're wearing, they squeeze certain parts of their body so they won't pass out when they pulling G's.
It's really to stop their skin from boiling, their
Mm,
fluids from boiling.
I see what you're saying.
There's no air, right? There's no air, and there's a lot of friction, right? So, and it breaks the sound barrier. And there's a part in the video that shows this line going down the back of the plane. That's the sound barrier being broken.
Mm. Yeah, because in a few there you go. That's the green. It's the suits. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And these planes are. Go ahead. Hello.
I thought Ulysses wanted to say something, but
Oh no, I'm listening. You guys go ahead.
And these planes are still in operation.
absolutely, they use them in the North Pole, and they've used them in Syria as well.
It's amazing. Near space. Wow.
They actually have another fighter jet that's actually capable of going into space and coming back. They haven't in the video they don't mention the name of it because it's top secret, but it's an evolution to the MiG-31.
I guess that was going to be my next question too. Is like the capabilities of these fighter jets, to actually dive, deep off into space, right out of the stratosphere, and then basically into the realm of space. Because a lot of these jets remind me of like if for any anime nerds that might be listening in, like any like the old Macross series. Wait, hold on, that's my daughter. Some of the older Macross series, like Robotech, stuff like that, where the planes look like traditional, like MiG and F-15s and F-22s. They look like these typical type jets, but then like when. Okay, babe, hold on 1 second. Babe, hold on. So like sorry, that's my daughter. You know, those they remind me of those jets. They look traditional, but then as soon as they get out in space, they'd like convert out into like some sort of mech robot type of fighting apparatus. But the jets themselves, they looked relatively similar to the jets that you see air forces all throughout the world flying. So I guess my question is like how capable are these type of design jets going out into space with their propulsion systems and that type of thing? Like how capable are they?
I think you can only go to a certain distance, right? Because you're going to run out of fuel. There's no way for you to refuel unless you refuel before you actually go out and come back in, because it takes a lot of fuel to get up.
Right.
And because the Earth is not flat, they don't actually go straight up in the vertical. They actually scale out. So they're kind of lifting. They're in elevations basically. Right here's the refueling right here in the video if you're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
But
is
yeah,
some serious stuff.
the Americans never had an actual response to this sort of aircraft. I think the I want to say the F-117 Nighthawk was probably their response to it, and it really never took off as much. It got taken down in the Kosovo War, and they never used it again. So
Hmm.
let me see some. I see a lot of people saying in the chat. Okay. Zoe Royalty said could use this to fire EMP missiles at the U.S. if they wanted to. It's interesting that you should say that, Zoe Royalty, because an EMP doesn't have to fire into anything, right? You basically take most Russian planes and even American planes too. Most Russian planes are already equipped with these modules that sit on each end of the wing, and even at the tip of the nose of the plane itself. And they usually have a black tip, and that black tip is an EMP accessory. So there is a video, and maybe I should bring that up too. Maybe I should bring that up.
They're
Well,
saying
actually, I
that
just want to see this real
at
quick.
at the stratosphere, tears and saliva starts to boil.
Yeah, absolutely. You're
Mm.
way up there.
Damn.
This is, it's really complicated when you start talking about getting into space orbit and, space exploration and stuff like that.
I noticed on the windshields, I'm going to call them windshield. I don't know what the technical name of these fighter jets that as a
Cockpit?
tent. Yeah, the cockpit. There's a tent to the
Yeah.
window. Yes.
Yeah, so
There's
you don't find yourself.
right. Notice that it's the same type of. It's similar to the astronauts when they bring down a tent when they in view of the sun.
hmm I just want to because Zoe Royalty brought this up, so I just want to show this video of the Russian jet that was buzzing over the Donald Cook, and it did it 12 times. And a lot of people are looking at the video and they're like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't armed. Actually, it was armed with EMP accessories on there." And the reason why the ship couldn't they didn't do anything is because the ship was disabled because the Russian jet flew over it and scrambled all the electronics, all the PC systems on it. So they couldn't even respond. Their radars were taken offline. Their fire mechanisms were taken offline, and essentially they were sitting duck in the sea.
Hmm.
So I just want to show that.
So we just taking
man.
out people's electronics, huh?
Oh, that's been a strategy for a long time. It's cyber warfare capabilities.
Oh yeah.
The Russians
Oh,
are
yeah.
top notch with cyber warfare. Chinese are top notch with cyber warfare capabilities. I mean, I think we talked about this last week about the Chinese popping up in a with their submarine in the back of a U.S. Fleet. I may have been a 6 or 7 fleet, and they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know how to respond to something like that. But that's where we're at right now. Cyber warfare capabilities. If you have cyber warfare capabilities as a nation state, whether you're forget about China, forget about the great powers of China, Russia, and America. If you're somebody like, let's say, Venezuela or even Cuba, and you have cyber warfare capabilities, that's a big piece of the chessboard that most adversaries wouldn't know what to do anyways, right? Because they don't know your interior, and you have an advantage if you know their interior, and you have the capability to actually take out their radars, take out their fire control systems before they even launch. We saw something similar in Syria when Trump launched those Tomahawk cruise missiles into Syria, and 80% of them were taken out by cyber warfare capabilities from the Russians. So they just basically fell on the ground.
This is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I just want to show that video because if you haven't watched the video, you should watch it. It's a very interesting video in terms of military hardware in the Russian Federation. Very good stuff that they can do when they put their mind to it.
Yeah, they got some super, man. Yep. These are super capabilities.
Absolutely.
Golly. All right. You all want to go to the next article?
Yeah, let's do it.
You go ahead.
All right, Paul. Share my screen here. All right. Our next article comes from NewYorkTimes.com. Title: Nikki Haley to resign as Trump's ambassador to the UN. Written by Maggie Haberman and Mark Landler and Eric Wong. All right. Excuse me. Article: President Trump's ambassador to the UN, Nikki R. Haley, said on Tuesday that she would resign at the end of the year, marking the departure of one of the few high-profile women in the Trump administration. Ms. Haley, a former Republican governor of South Carolina, had been an early and frequent critic of Mr. Trump, but he named her to the United Nations job weeks after his election. As ambassador, Ms. Haley has been an outspoken and often forceful envoy, someone whom foreign diplomats look for guidance from an administration known for haphazard and inconsistent policy positions, who emerged as something of a star amid the dysfunction of the president's first national security team. It was a blessing to go into the UN with body armor every day and defend America. Ms. Haley, seated next to Mr. Trump in the Oval Office, told reporters, "I'll never truly step aside from fighting for our country, but I will tell you that I think it's time." White House staff members were caught off guard by the announcement, which Ms. Haley and Mr. Trump kept closely under wraps. But the president said Ms. Haley had informed him roughly 6 months ago that she wanted to take a break by the time his administration reached its second anniversary. He said that he hoped Ms. Haley would return in a different role and that he would name her successor in the coming weeks. "She's done a fantastic job, and we've done a fantastic job together," Mr. Trump said. "We're all happy for you in one way, but we hate to lose you." Speaking to reporters on Air Force One as he flew to a rally in Iowa, Mr. Trump said he was considering a short list of 5 candidates to replace Ms. Haley, including Dina Powell, a former deputy national security advisor. Earlier, he said that his daughter Ivanka Trump will be incredible, but it doesn't mean I pick her. Another possibility is Richard A. Greenell, the American ambassador to Germany, who served as a spokesman for John R. Bolton, the current national security advisor, when he was an ambassador to the United Nations under President George W. Bush. Mr. Trump said he would consider Mr. Greenell, but added, "I'd personally rather keep Rick where he is." Ms. Haley is said to have a strained relationship with Mr. Bolton, a longtime critic of the United Nations and a more dominant figure than his predecessor, Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. But she has been closely allied with Ms. Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner. The couple held a dinner in New York months ago celebrating Ms. Haley's tenure there. And during her appearance with Mr. Trump on Tuesday, she singled them both out for praise. "Jared is such a hidden genius that no one understands," Ms. Haley said. "And Ivanka has been just a great friend, and they do a lot of things behind the scenes that I wish more people knew about because we're a better country because they're in this administration." People close to Ms. Haley insisted There was nothing behind her decision other than fatigue after nearly 2 years in a rigorous job. She also wanted to make her decision known before the midterms to avoid the potential for an embarrassing departure if the vote were to go against the president. Miss Haley's joint appearance with Mr. Trump and his effusive praise for her made her a rarity among officials departing the Trump administration, whom he often criticizes as they go out the door. But the timing irked some West Wing aides who saw the announcement as taking attention away from the swearing in of Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh and his first day at the Supreme Court. Soon after her arrival in New York, Miss Haley, the first cabinet level United Nations ambassador for a Republican administration since the end of the Cold War, quickly made clear that she was the position as a stepping stone to a higher. She saw the position as a stepping stone to a higher political office, a possibility that Mr. Trump may have resisted. She became a far more visible face of American foreign policy than her first boss at the State Department, former Secretary of State Rex W. Tillerson, and Time magazine celebrated Miss Haley's ascendance by putting her on its cover as one of the women who are changing the world. But Mike Pompeo, Mr. Tillerson's replacement, has recently reasserted the Secretary of State's traditional role, and with Mr. Bolton a sometime antagonist, she had less of a role than at the start of the administration. Miss Haley, who has long been seen as a potential presidential candidate, said on Tuesday she had no intention of running in 2020 as has been speculated. Instead, she said she plans to campaign for Mr. Trump's reelection. In the short term, people familiar with her thinking said that she is likely to work in the private sector and make more money. After nearly 8 years in government, 6 years as governor of South Carolina, in addition to her time at the United Nations, her 2018 financial disclosure report shows Miss Haley has at least 1.5 million in debts, including a mortgage of more than 1 million. Wow. For the moment, few Republican strategists believe that Ms. Haley is inclined to run against Mr. Trump, but those who know her believe that she is likely to run in 2024 or even 2020 should the president not run again. An open presidential race is a better chance to show off her incredible political skills rather than some quick, quick, quixotic primary effort, said Matt Moore, who was the Republican Party chairman in South Carolina when Miss Haley was governor there. The daughter of immigrants from India, Miss Haley favored free market and global trade and earned international attention when she was South Carolina's governor for speaking out against the display of the Confederate battle flag in front of the State House in the aftermath of the 2015 massacre at a black church in Charleston. During Mr. Trump's presidential campaign, she sharply criticized her demeanor and warned what it might mean for American diplomacy, even suggesting that his tendency to lash out at critics could cause a world war. Those disagreements continued after she joined the administration. Ms. Haley acknowledged her policy agreements with the president in an op-ed in the Washington Post last month when she criticized an anonymous senior administration official who wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times describing a chaotic administration in which many of the president's aides disagreed with their boss. I don't agree with the president on everything, Ms. Haley wrote. When there is disagreement, there is a right way and a wrong way to address it. I pick up the phone and call him or meet with him in person. Last December, Ms. Haley said that women who had accused Mr. Trump of sexual misconduct should be heard and they should be dealt with. It was a surprising break from the administration's long-standing assertion that the accusations were false and that voters rightly dismissed them when they elected Mr. Trump. I think any woman who has felt violated or felt mistreated in any way, they have every right to speak up, Ms. Haley told CBS. In April, Ms. Haley announced that the administration would impose sanctions on Russian companies found to be assisting Syria's chemical weapons program. It was part of a menu of options on how to retaliate against a suspected gas attack that killed dozens April 7th. But the next day, the White House announced that Mr. Trump had decided not to go forward with the sanctions, contradicting Ms. Haley. The White House said she had gotten ahead of the curve, and one official attributed Miss Haley's statement to momentary confusion. Miss Haley testily responded that she not get confused. At the State Department, however, officials quietly applauded Miss Haley's strong words on Russia, with Mr. Trump refusing to criticize President Vladimir V. Putin and some of his advisors reluctant to get too far in front of him. Felt she was stepping into a vacuum. Last month, Ms. Haley collided with Mr. Bolton after she announced that Mr. Trump would lead a session of the United Nations Security Council devoted entirely to Iran, after European officials protested that doing so would showcase divisions in the West because of Mr. Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. The White House broadened the theme to countering weapons of mass destruction. Mr. Bolton did not criticize Ms. Haley, but he drove the decision to shift the agenda. White House officials noted that under United Nations rules, Iran will have been entitled to send its president to the meeting, setting up the awkward possibility that Mr. Trump will have sat across a table from Iran's leader. Ms. Haley also favored negotiating the, the continued participation of the United States in the Global Compact for Migration, a senior administration official said, but officials at the White House opposed it, and the United States announced last December it was pulling out. At times, though, Ms. Haley seemed more in sync with Mr. Trump on policy than other members of his national security team, and she did not hesitate to highlight that. She spoke out forcefully in favor of the president's formal recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, as well as his decision to cut American funding to Palestinian refugees. Ms. Haley has been criticized by citizens for responsibility and ethics in Washington, a liberal nonprofit watchdog group. On Monday, the group sent a letter to Steve A. Lenning, the State Department's Inspector General, asking for an investigation into whether Ms. Haley had violated executive branch regulations on accepting gifts. The letter said Ms. Haley and her husband accepted 7 free flights on luxury private aircraft from the South Carolina businessman in 2017 at an estimate worth of tens of thousands of dollars. Representatives for Ms. Haley did not reply to a request for comment. Federal ethics regulations say that an employee cannot accept any gifts given because of the employee's official position. The letter noted that Ms. Haley had previously argued that each flight qualified for an exception to the rules because she had a personal relationship with the donors. Okay. But the group said Ms. Haley's relationship with the 3 chief executives had significant political and professional components. All right. And the title of the article again from the New York Times, excuse me, Nikki Haley to resign as Trump's ambassador to the UN. Any comments?
This is big news.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say it's big news. I figured, I thought that, pulling out of the international courts was probably maybe like the last straw for her. Now, there's also some other implications here. This may actually be signaling a shift or a change in the U.S. geopolitical positioning, but it is big news. I agree.
I say it's big news because it's always been rumored that she would use Trump as a way to get into the political arena at the top so that she could run for president in 2024. So she might be taking time off now, to build up her campaign and actually go for the White House. It's rumored as well that Pence might drop out by 2022 as well, as a way to go on a Pence Haley ticket or Haley Pence ticket. That's a possibility. The piece about Ivanka Trump, she could never get elected on anything, so it's important that she works with Trump, her father, to advance her career in politics. So Trump would have to appoint her into a very high end position as long as he's in power. Now, he won't do it now because there's no guarantee he's going to be there after 2020. Although it's highly likely that he would, because I don't think that the opposition has anything to throw at him. So if he succeeds 2020, she will be appointed right away to a very strategic position within his cabinet. But going back to Nikki Haley, she she was a front man for the deep state. So that's why when she would say that we're going to put sanctions here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then Trump walks her statements back, that's not her working with Trump. That's her working with the deep state.
Can you explain to us what the deep state is?
The deep state are people who are unelected and not usually visible to the political environment, that make decisions that decide what goes on in the geopolitics, as well as the national front for policy. People who have access to the White House that should not have access to the White House, security clearances, and so on and so forth. These people are very strong in their position, and they also tend to be businessmen. A lot of your military vendors, such as Lockheed, such as Boeing, those are the people within the deep state that decide, well, if we don't go to war, then we're not going to be building any sort of military hardware for the U.S. government or any of their allies. So, in order for us to stay in business, there has to be some kind of war or conflict going on. And those are the people who are pushing for conflict and always pushing the button.
Okay.
You were going to say something, Lino?
No, I was saying, what you're saying, that this could be a strategic move, for her to possibly run for some type of higher office, such as president, vice president, and if not 2020, then 2024, to prepare herself for that.
She could very well be the first female U.S. president. If this is if there's no competition. Now you throw somebody like Michelle Obama in there, who's still relatively young, and has a lot of political swag all over the place. I mean, she could walk into anywhere and sell out an arena. You put her in position, then your days are numbered. You're screwed. You can't go against her. She's a freight train.
She has that kind of shit.
I did see something like recently, literally like some pictures talking about Michelle Obama 2020. And for anyone who doesn't know, Michelle Obama was like basically like the first lady to essentially be like, double mastered in 2 Ivy League colleges. She's more than from an academic and from a knowledge standpoint, she's more than equipped to actually hold that position as president. So that is a very real possibility.
I have a question. Let's say Michelle Obama runs for president. The first question is, who? This is just pure speculation. Who would be her vice president? And the question 2 is, could a former president run for vice president?
No. Once you're out, you're out. Okay. But to your second question, no. But to your first question, that could be that could be a toss-up. It could be anybody from a minority male, Cory Booker, somebody like that, or it could be a female like Kamala Harris.
And Kamala Harris was the talk for some time. I don't know like what it is that's really gone on that may have her, not being viewed. Well, I guess she would be the female Republican, or I'm sorry, female Democratic candidate. I can't really see Hillary Clinton being prevalent in 2020.
Well, she wouldn't, right? But her daughter would. So Chelsea would probably be an option because she's still relatively young. She's like 38. Well, I don't know. She's not 30. She's like 35 now.
Mhm.
Her son or her child is like
He's like 5 or
by the
some
time she
shit.
runs 20. Yeah, but by the time she runs 2025, her child would be of age, right? So it would be
Right.
no, be a preteen basically. But kind of like Sasha and Malia were pretty autonomous. You didn't have to get a babysitter or anything like that. They were kind of minding their own. And now that they're adults, right after you get out, you're also going to groom them to be in the same position as well. But although some of the stuff I've seen from them, I wouldn't trust them with a with a self-driving vehicle. If you ask me.
Wow.
Well, you also have what's her name? Ocasio-Cortez, Alexandria, the chick out of New York, right? So she's
Yeah, but
another
she's
young.
inflated. She's inflated. She wouldn't be a.
Well, she's a
She
Justice
wouldn't be
Democrat.
viable.
Yeah, she's a Justice
Well, not so much
Democrat.
of a justice, not so much of a justice Democrat, but more about she's a lot of hot air, right? She's like junk food. She's political junk food. It's good right now, and then later on you're hungry again, and you won't get any substance out of her, so
Right.
to speak. So she's more of a local candidate rather than a national and geopolitical piece. Michelle
Right.
Obama would be the geopolitical piece, right? She
Yeah.
would be able to tie in and open up Africa back to the United States, take it away from China, and take it away from the Russians, take it away from the Europeans. She can do that with
She's
a
already
swift of a
got
pen.
plenty. She's already got plenty of political capital accrued, being Barack's wife, right? So if another Obama stepped into a position, right, where they were leading the United States, there'd be a lot more countries that would say, okay, well, look, we've got some sense in the White House, so let's see what you guys are talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right, and for Trump, maybe they see the writing on the wall for Trump. People are starting to bail out because 2020 is right around the corner, and if there's a possibility, it's 50-50. He may not be reelected, depending on who decides to go against him. She's probably preserving herself to say like, hey, if, in case the shit hits the fan, let me get out of the way because I don't want to go down with the ship for what it is. They say she's loyal. I question that loyalty, but I think Trump has a line of people. From what I saw before, he has a line of people ready to go for that ambassador to the United Nations, and
Yeah,
it's
I was
not that
about to
big of
say.
a deal, anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's about as loyal as her offers from the private sector.
She's about as loyal as whatever the deep state tells her to do.
Right, right.
That's
Yeah,
this is pretty interesting.
yeah, it is. It is because she's a strategic piece to getting things done at the United Nations, and if she can't pull any punches, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go
That's-
ahead.
No, I was just saying that if she can't pull any punches, because if you saw some of the video, when she's trying to get other people within the United Nations Assembly to vote yes on Jerusalem, and a lot of countries like I don't know if I really want to sign up for that thing. She had a hard time getting support within the United Nations herself. So I would assume that also plays a role, that she's not really effective in that area, right? She's supposed to be weaponized to get things done within the United Nations. She can't really get it done. A lot of times they were backing out, especially with this whole Jerusalem thing. United States supporting, moving their embassy to Jerusalem was a big was a big flaw for her.
Yeah, I was gonna say
She didn't
that
get
it
the
caused a
support that
lot
she
of,
thought.
a lot of isolation, and really it was her really going to the UN and basically saying to all the other nations that this is what the U.S. isn't going to do. You know, and that's largely what her role and her job was there. If you watch a lot of clips when she's addressing UN assemblies, she's just basically talking about what the U.S. isn't going to do, what the U.S. is going to be pulling back from, what the U.S. is going to be doing to make America great again. And I'm not sure if she quite signed up from that being a senator from South Carolina, but I can see how this does bolster any sort of presidential runs that she does have, because now she has international political experience.
Well, what she could do now is she can go on her tour, right? She can go do speeches and things like that, and accrue 100,000 here, 80,000 there, and things like that, like Hillary Clinton was doing. She has time if she plans on going back, 2024.
I'm saying this makes her
That's a lot of
really
time.
this makes her a legit candidate for 2024.
Yeah, and she's also broke, so she can wave the flag of I'm a struggling politician. Please help. With her little cup out. Saying
Private sector.
Well,
Yeah,
Private sector.
that was
yeah.
my next question. What was the purpose of them bringing her debt up, her debt in?
Well, when you're in debt, despite the fact that you're a politician, you don't really make that much money. So you got to go lobby, to get your finances up. You see, Hillary Clinton did that with the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it also justifies. It kind of serves as her justification for resigning. Like, if they're like, yeah, she's doing all this work, great, she's doing all this, but they're $1 million. What was it, $1.5 million in debt or whatever it is? Got $1 million mortgage. I mean, that is some sort of justification. Like, yeah, given my job, we are behind on our bills. Got to go.
Yes, and her kids, have student loan debt. So it would behoove her to actually campaign on student loan debt and to fight that, and in order to get the millennials behind her, right? You can use that to your advantage, but she has a lot of I don't want to say a lot of baggage, but she has a few man purses going around, around her belt. The whole thing with South Carolina, with the church shooting, with Dowling Roof, the resistance of, whether or not she should take down the Confederate flag, things like that. That type of stuff hurt her. She had to get out of office as soon as possible. It was fortunate that Trump was able to win, because that was the exit strategy for her.
I was gonna say, I honestly think she took that position because of that right there.
Right. There was really nothing you can do. You had other countries, basically questioning, the legitimacy of U.S. National security. You got guys running around into religious institutions based on a false ideology, and more of a criminal ideology of white supremacy, killing black people. Who are you to point the fingers at anybody else, like Iran or Syria or Russia, for that matter, about their human rights violations and their safety?
When you mention Barack's daughters, I was when you all was talking, I was listening while you all was talking. I just did a few searches, and interesting moves you they're making.
Who's that?
Uh, one with Sasha, she hanging out with Cardi B and the guy from Migos, like a straight up
Okay.
picture. That's
Well, I mean, they're young, right? So they're into the music, but the other one was smoking weed, right? I mean, I think it's Sasha. I think, she's out there smoking weed and
At some music
doing all types of
festival, yeah.
nefarious.
you
Yeah,
said she out
Lollapalooza,
there.
I think it was.
Right.
Okay.
You don't know Chelsea Clinton to have done anything like that.
Yeah.
She's pretty much been squeaky clean.
Yeah, the closest daughters that I can compare these to were our Bush daughters.
Bush's daughters, yeah. Jenna and the other one. They were wild biz.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I still think that Trump still has a lot of room to play, to wiggle with in terms of this. It's not a big deal now because she's going to serve until the end of the year until they find a replacement. So she, it's not like she just packed her stuff up and then ran off into the middle of the night. Let me just check the chat because I see there's a lot of activity going on.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
All right.
Dollar Will was saying that. Dollar Will was saying basically that Obama could come back, but that's not the case. I think it's 22nd Amendment prevents him from coming back. But Michelle could run, and Michelle has so much firepower behind her right now. She can literally take out anybody who goes against her. And I don't think anybody would from the Democratic Party. I don't think anybody would actually go against her anyways. But in terms of the Republicans, they just don't have an answer because they just don't have the diversity that reflects the country's population makeup, especially in places like California that's made up of a large percentage of Latinos and Asians. You just don't have a response to that. I mean, Michelle Malkin, she has a big mouth and she runs around, speaking on behalf of the conservatives, but she's she's not an effective political piece for the Republicans. In this regard, Trump is kind of isolating himself, from diversity. I mean, he speaks at these rallies, but at the same time, the rallies are all in places that are majority white. I think Trump is doing a disservice to himself, or the administration is doing a disservice to itself, not reaching out to black men, not campaigning on some of black men's issues, because I think Trump had like 20%. I think 20% of black men actually voted for Trump in comparison to Romney. That was 12% in 2012 when he ran against Obama. So there is a strong contingent of black men that you could pick up in this process if you were to actually campaign in their direction. But then again, black men are not organized themselves, so we don't have a political strategy ourselves to actually to get on either side, whether it's the left or the right. And looking at black men's values, I just want to take it away from Nikki for a second. Looking at black men's values and what their political interests are, it aligns one for one with the Republicans. Smaller, more efficient government, more power in the hands of the citizens, which would be the constituents of black men. These are all areas that black men align with, but for whatever reason, black men don't seem to be politically motivated at all. It's just kind of like, well, I'm not going to show up at the polls, and it's like, well, what else? What's your other strategy? What's your alternative? I just won't show up. That's not a strategy to me.
No, it's not. It's not. And I've admit I've been guilty of that in the past. And you are right. We're not. We're not saying think as one monolith, but we have to have some type of unwritten understanding that we abide by.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah,
any other?
I think now is a good time for black men to organize and create a political party for themselves, or a political affairs committee that would allow for us to have our voice heard. And it doesn't have to be one elected official or anything like that. It just has to be men coming to the table saying these are our grievances. This is what we stand for. This is what we want, and we're going to put pressure on Republican Party to actually do that, because the Democrats aren't going to do that. They don't value black men unless they're dead. That's where Black Lives Matter comes in.
Yeah, it's typically they put their support behind the women.
Right, black women are a wing, a weaponized wing of the Democratic Party. So for black men, we have to actually counter that and say that we are the affected minority. We are the guys who aren't getting called back for jobs. We are the guys who are not getting the SBA loans. We are the guys we are the people who are not um, who are underserved in terms of the judicial system. We are the guys who are coming out of the military, not getting similar opportunities that our other male counterparts are. And we do make up a large majority of the homeless. You can go down Skid Row and see like 80% of the people on Skid Row are damn near black men.
Mhm. All right. Any other comments, whatever?
No, man, we can move on to the next article.
All right. Our next article comes from trtworld.com. Title: North African countries to EU. We will not serve as your border guards. Article: When the EU pushed to outsource its migrant problems to North Africa, the Maghreb states delivered a solid rejection. European Union leaders reached a deal on migration during the June 29 European Council summit, agreeing on the need to set up asylum processing centers across North Africa to try to stem the migrant flow into Europe, which is already at an all-time low. The processing centers are planned for the North African nations of Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya. Since the summit, no EU country has stepped up to create any of these centers, including France, whose President Emmanuel Macron pushed for the idea during the summit. But no country has actually agreed to host a processing center. Morocco: are we partners or objects to you? On the contrary, North African countries clearly voiced rejections of the proposed plans. Are we partners or just a neighbor you're afraid of? Asked Moroccan Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita in an interview with the German national daily Die, questioning Europe's attitude. The EU can't ask Morocco to help with migration and the fight against terrorism and treat the country like an object. Morocco rejects and has always rejected these kinds of methods for managing the issues of migration flows, he concluded. Tunisia: the answer is no. Burrito's sentiment was shared by the range of North African states. The proposal was also made to Tunisia by both Germany and Italy. The answer is a clear no, clarified Tahar Sharif, Tunisia's ambassador to the EU. We have neither the capacity nor the means to organize these detention centers. We are already suffering a lot from what is happening in Libya, which has been the effect of European action. Algeria takes back its children. Algeria has rejected the proposed deal while cementing ties with Germany through a positive visit by German Chancellor Angela Merkel to Algiers in late September. An agreement was reached between the countries on speeding up court extradition requests of Algerian nationals in exchange for the repatriation of Algerian illegals by Berlin. Algeria takes back its children, said Prime Minister Ahmad Kouhaya, speaking in speaking on the nearly 3,700 Algerians awaiting deportation in Germany. Chancellor Merkel's visit to Algeria coincided with the forced retirement of the Algerian National Army's high commanders of the Air Force and Land Forces. It would be followed by the firing of nearly a dozen generals and the investigation of more for abuse of power. Algeria does battle for the rest of the international community, he said, by preventing 20,000 to 30,000 people annually from entering Algeria illegally, noted Ouhaya, implying that Algeria prevented them from making the crossing into Europe. Libya: take your money elsewhere. Italian Minister, Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini visited Tripoli in late June to convince Libyan authorities to accept the deal. Salvini is a renowned anti-immigration, far-right-wing politician who has been widely accredited with the rise of xenophobia and populism in Italy, and most recently threatened to close Italy's airports if Germany begins repatriating migrants to Italy. Salvini had previously called for asylum centers to be set up on the southern Libyan border. Libya's prime minister later spoke against the asylum centers. We are strictly against Europe officially placing illegal migrants who are no longer wanted in the EU in our country. We also won't agree to on any deals with EU money about taking in more illegal migrants, he promised, while adding that European leaders should instead pressure migrants' origin countries to prevent refugee seekers from leaving in the first place. The EU is looking to make a deal with North African countries similar to the deal it made with Turkey in 2016. Under the 2016 EU-Turkey migration deal, Ankara agreed to prevent migrants from crossing to Greece and receive repatriated migrants in exchange for several billion euros in financial aid to assist managing and processing over 3.5 million refugees. The likelihood of a deal taking place though, is increasingly slim, given opposition from within the EU staff. 6 different presidencies of the EU have failed to come up with a solution to the refugees. Europeans cannot ask other countries to do things they are not ready to do themselves, said Vincent Cochet, UNHCR Special Envoy to the Central Mediterranean. At the European level, what is important is they work first on the internal dimension with the appropriate mechanism in terms of processing and in terms of distribution of refugees. At the heart of the EU disagreement is the Dublin system, which determines countries responsible for processing asylum claims and hosting refugees or migrants granted asylum. Migrant challenges, migrant challenge will only get worse. Amidst rising populism and xenophobia across Europe, coupled with a continuing war instability in the Middle East, the refugee crisis is only expected to grow. In 30 years, Africa will have a 2.5 billion citizens, Europe 716 million, about 26 million less than today. According to the International Organization of Migration, some 82,100 migrants have made it across the Mediterranean Sea to Europe this year, with another 1,741 dying in the attempt. Fear and the far right. Coinciding with the rise of populist right wing governments across Europe, nearly 4 in 10 Europeans think that migration is more of a problem than an opportunity, according to the latest Eurobarometer poll. In Italy, one in every two sees migration as problem. Migrant intolerance is also highest in countries with a distorted perception of migrants. Italians, for instance, believe that migrants make up 26% of the population. The figure is actually 9.5%. This might explain Italian fear over migration. According to the latest Notizie di Pora report published annually by the Italian Journalists Association in 2017 alone, news about migrants made up 44% of the news, with news about crimes made by asylum seekers making up 16% of all news. In a last bid effort to win over stakeholders for the deal, European Council President Donald Tusk announced a summit between EU leaders and the Arab League states in February, which may bring migrants and their hopes more of the same. My comment on this, I think Libya, um, um, I think the president of Libya said it, or the representative of Libya said it. He said to put pressure on countries where these migrants are coming from. I agree with him on that. That's my only point about this article.
Well, we have to also take into consideration that Europe isn't off the hook yet. A lot of the colonizers who are bleeding Africa for all its resources are the same ones who want to keep the Africans from coming in. And they, instead of dropping off buckets of money, why don't you pay back reparations to these countries, to the continent itself and the countries that are affected by it? You know, they wouldn't be leaving Africa if you hadn't destabilized and sucked all the resources out of it. That's the reason why they're leaving. They're not leaving because they want to be white.
Yeah, and then the South Africans wouldn't be implementing land reclamation acts if this were the case as well.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Europeans feel that they don't owe Africa anything, but they can't seem to keep their their nasty little hands out of it. The way they fix it,
kind of similar to the Europeans here.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to finish up my point. Part of this reason why they keep migrating over there is because they're being told that there's opportunities over there that really doesn't exist. If you really do some research on African migrants going into Europe, like Italy and Greece and things like that, they're being slaughtered over there and and the women are being sex trafficked. So, and we see a lot of kids being involved in child trafficking as well.
Trafficking, yeah.
So it's not like it's not like there's like it's a land of honey and gold over there. You know, they're being abused over there. I know I read an article a few months ago, early in the summer, about right wing nationalists in Europe, basically doing drive-by shootings on African migrants.
Yeah,
they're slaughtering these people as they come into the border. And there's been video posted on YouTube of white journalists. That's a mute you. Yeah. There's video on YouTube of white journalists, attacking, migrants coming across the border, as if, tripping a person who's searching for refuge, who's searching for asylum, is going to help the situation for them. Europeans don't have any problem taking from Africa and coming down for their little vacations and whatnot, and their little timeshare tiny houses, whatever you want to call it down there. But then when someone wants to come to their country, all of a sudden now you want to have referendums and new laws put into place.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work.
Well, like I said, it's similar. It's similar to how you have a lot of your rural white MAGA Trump supporters. On the one end, they're anti-immigration, but at the same token, it was their ancestors that sought asylum that brought their asses here in the first goddamn place. You know what I mean? So it's like this catch-22 type of thing with them.
Right. And they can't come to America for obvious reasons. I mean, you can't sail across the Atlantic Ocean in a dinghy like they're doing across the Mediterranean. I've seen a video of Lauren Southern on YouTube who participated in trying to sink. She traveled from Canada to Europe to try to sink some of these rubber dinghies that the African migrants were sailing across the Mediterranean Sea to get to Italy and Greece.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that.
And I'm surprised that the African Union or even African leaders are not standing up and saying, you know what, that's a terrorist right there, and she falls on the terrorist list. So therefore, these are the people that we don't want coming into our country. If our people can't come into your country, then your people can't come here either. So that means, Richard Spencer, Steve Bannon, Lauren Southern, all these white nationalists who are conspiring to try to take America back and all this other stuff. Those guys should be put on the terrorist watch list. If I'm the African Union, if I'm South Africa, if I'm Ghana, if I'm the president of Kenya or Paul Kagame out in Rwanda, you need black men that can actually step up and say, we're not going to accept any of this BS anymore. We're going to look out for our own best interests. We're going to make Africa great again, and we don't want the European Union's money. Just give us back our reparations.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, and I think that, where we're really just starting to kind of see that come to fruition now, right? After all this time, where you've largely had like apartheid, you have all these other colonialist maneuvers that have gone on, you know, the murder of Patrice Lumumba, and you know, just you can run down the line, right? Where it was largely European nations that were behind a lot of these coups and then the usurpation of the resources and all that. And I think right about now you're starting to see this cohesive sort of front start to form that just says no. Look, we know the Chinese aren't like coming around, you know, like paving the road in goldenness, but you know what? They've been giving us a way better deal than you motherfuckers ever have. So I think there's a recognition now in the power that a lot of folks have there on the continent with regards to themselves, the land, and the resources. You know, and that's why they're taking their shit back and basically saying, no, motherfucker, you gotta actually come to the table and we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna negotiate about this. And the European nations are largely finding themselves frozen out. The Chinese, I mean, you know, that's a whole nother discussion for another topic, because depending on what region or what nation, you know, the Chinese are either outright colonizing, or on the flip side, look, you know, they're coming to the table, maybe even possibly having to pay some sort of tariff or something to do business. So, I mean, you know, it's a good sign. I see it shifting for that.
Mm-hmm. And I would say it's a better time for black men in America to actually take advantage of opportunities as well. We need to establish our own African Union in America and interface with the African Union over there, and facilitate, you know, in exchange for your people, we get some of that land. You know, your people can come here. We'll send some of our best guys over there, and let's exchange. You know, have land reclamation for us.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's get to our next.
Let's actually go to the chat. I think there was some stuff in the chat.
Right.
Yeah, I think people have been chiming in on over there.
Oh, chat.
Let me see. Who's in the chat talking? Zo Royalty.
What up, Preem?
North Africans if North Africans and Turkey really wanted to bring down the EU, they should unleash all the refugees into Europe. That's how you destabilize Europe and bring down white supremacy in Europe. I don't know. The problem is that a lot of people who are migrating there are living in a ghetto, so to speak. If you look at France is highly apartheid in their social structure. So in most of your underdeveloped areas, underserved areas, that's where all the black people live. But in all the good areas, that's where all the white French speaking people live. Even black people who do speak French, you know, they're stuck in the French ghettos. So I don't know. I think what needs to happen is you have to have a policy that drives the Europeans out of Africa. Not overnight, but you have to have a policy that actually drives them out of Africa and makes them come to the table to negotiate. I mean, what they tried to do based on this article is basically put a carrot on a stick. Why should Africans, you know, I mean, they didn't fall for it according to the article. They didn't fall for it. But why should Europeans put a carrot on a stick? Why don't the Africans put a carrot on a stick and make the Europeans bite the carrot?
Look, if the Chinese are coming in with infrastructure investment, man, a carrot on a stick ain't gonna cut it.
I want to reply to the Chinese. I don't think they're coming in with the type of, and I'm not trying to get off topic. I don't think they're coming in with the type of investment that people are thinking of.
It's infrastructure.
Who are you referring
to? Chinese.
Infrastructure.
No, I'm saying, okay, yeah, they're bringing it, but there's a caveat to it.
Oh, no. Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, you have different nations on the continent that are experiencing different things. Some nations have been very observant of the type of deals that other nations have struck with the Chinese, and were far more prudish in their negotiations, versus where some of the early adopters and the early partners, they basically just said, yeah, if you're going to put factories and you're going to put this and put that, yeah, come on. And they really didn't read the fine print. So I'm saying that you have other nations now that are even threatening to put sanctions on China. right? Because they want more of a fair deal. And what I'm saying, when you have nations and on the continent that are doing that, the hell makes you think you're going to walk in with a carrot on a stick just because you're white?
Are you referring to sanctions or tariffs?
I'm sorry, not sanctions, tariffs.
Okay.
I agree with you, Mike, when you say the leaders of these African countries, they're not saying anything. And I understand they want to be political, they want to play the political angle, but after years and years of not saying nothing, you have to look back and you have to say, okay, after 50 plus years since we've had independence, we haven't been saying nothing. We can't go on like this because we're going to be continued to be thrown around, kicked around, uh, taken advantage of. We are we're not one group. We're different nations, and I agree with you. These black men need to speak up.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure why they don't. I guess, see, Africans' relationship with Europeans is different than our relationship in America with white people, right? So there's a yearning for Africans to try to be uh, um to aspire to be like Europeans, whereas in America we're like, nah, we ain't really down with all that, we might talk about automation and artificial intelligence and pop our collar every now and then, but we not trying to be like you. We have our own identity.
and I've seen Africans in Europe that have been caught up in the ghettos and the racist act, being part of racist crimes. They think more along the lines of us. They go to Europe and they think one thing, and I've actually heard from Africans that they think that money is just on the street. Just go around, pick up money, pick up change. But when they go to Europe and get a shock and they see what it really is,
Hmm.
they turn and think more along the lines of us than how they used to think coming from Africa going to Europe.
Right, they get a dose of reality. You see the same thing with Jamaicans trying to come to America. Usually when I talk to people from the Caribbean, they always want some money, 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 because they think that everybody here is just bathing in wealth, and that's not really the case. You come up here and nothing, you got to work 2 and 3 jobs, and you're angry, but at the same time, black people are not bathing in wealth. I mean, relative to white people, we're not bathing in wealth. I mean, Tone Talks does discussions about this all the time.
And I think that these non-black Africans, well, non-American Africans, think that Black Americans are just wasting their opportunity, which to some extent, a good portion of us are. But when they come here, and like you said, you're working 2 jobs, you can't get ahead, you're angry, and you don't know why. And you come here thinking like, okay, I can make 30, 40, $50,000 doing this, but next thing you know, you in debt. Next thing you know, you're not getting ahead. Next thing you know, you these people can't identify
Right,
when you're
right.
when there's racist, well, when they're exposed to racist, they can't identify these racist tactics, and they think, oh, I just got looked over the job because this other person was better or so and so. No, you got looked over because you were black, and we have to break it down and explain to them because they don't know. They don't know why they're not getting ahead. They don't know why they're angry. They don't even know who to be, who or what to be angry at. They just know they're here. They're trying to get ahead. They're in debt. They want their children to go to school. They're paying all this money for their children to go to school, and then they're in debt. They just don't know why.
Right, and then the women, the African women, think that marrying a white man is going to solve their problems, and that we know how
I've
that
seen
we know
it.
how that goes.
I've seen it so many times, not just in America, but in Europe. I've shown some examples of a few women that I know of that went that route. And that's just not the case, because they believe they are so better and so superior, and that right there is a mental issue in their case, because they believe these men are so much better for them, and if they get this type of man, that life will be peaches and cream. That's a mental issue on their part, that they believe that.
Right, and it goes back to Africans not really having a political stance, right? They don't really know which side they want to be on. They don't really advocate, for the best interests of black people in America, despite all the videos showing that black men are underserved and being shot by police and things of that nature. They don't really seem to have an interest in that. But then they don't really have an interest in challenging the European colonialist system in the Francophone countries, as well as the former British colonial states. They don't seem to stand up. Now you have people like Julius Malema, who from the economic freedom fighters in South Africa, who's been very vocal, but then you don't see Julius Malema in every other African country, right? I mean, Julius Malema is today what Malcolm X was during the 19 yeah, right, during his during the 60s. So what we're seeing now is Africans are walking a fine line on their political stance as well as their identity. And as long as they don't have any.
Go ahead, Preem.
What's good, Preem?
Hey, what's up? Can I launch a curveball into this?
I'm pretty sure you are.
What's good?
So speaking to the getting shot and harassed by police, being an African, I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I mean, I'm probably more likely, or a person that's more likely, an African American male or a black male, is more likely to find themselves in a bad situation if they were to act or respond in an unassimilated way when approached by a police officer than they would if they were to respond in an assimilated way. In that, I mean, if I have the mindset that, hey, black men or, they're more likely to get pulled over, or this cop pulls me over is because of my color, and I have that in my mindset, I'm going to act, respond, answer questions, ask him questions in a way that's going to be more problematic for me and increase the probability of some shit going sideways with a cop that pulls me over on a dark road, versus if I was to have the mindset of someone who has assimilated to this society and said, okay, as Larry Elder says, if a cop pulls you over, just roll down all your windows, have your left arm at the 12 o'clock position and your right arm at the 3 o'clock position, have your ID and whatever in hand, and just go in and hand it to them, and it's yes sir or yes ma'am to every question. So adopting the mindset of assimilating is much more better for people of color in this country, which is not our country, than it would be to act as a fringe group within this country. Doing that, you're gonna have problems. We will have problems, and it's not selling out, but it's we're not in our own shit, so we can act like a fringe group or fringe organization, when they already have rules set up, and say, hey, just go ahead and abide by this. Assimilation is not selling out, and the big problem is when we're in something and we try to create our own cottage type of society within someone else's. It's not going to work. That's it.
Well, no, I don't think anyone, no one here anyway. I mean, no one here is advocating anything that would be considered fringe, right? Like, no one over here is advocating anything like that. I mean, I think we're more or less speaking to the African political situation, not really so much ours. Ours, we well, Preem, this, we discuss a lot of the solutions that we think would work for African Americans and these are largely solutions that are institutional. So this is business, education, and these are already pre-existing institutions, right? That we're talking about. So by no means are we taking any sort of fringe position or anything like that as African Americans. We're taking more of an objective view on what's going on in Africa, because over there, you do have land reformation talks. You do have negotiations with nations with nations who in the past could be considered colonizers, who are now looking to strike a deal, as a lot of our fellow Trump supporters would like to use, the lexicon. So that's what we're speaking to. We're speaking to, I guess, the newfound power, or this new realized power, let's just say, of individuals and the collectives on the African continent, with regards to their own sort of like just their own their own standing in their own position, being on their own land, speaking for their own resources, claiming their own resources. I mean, I don't think there's anything fringe about that.
We still have a couple more articles to go, so we want to jump to.
No, absolutely, yeah. Let's go.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, our next article comes from AlJazeera.com, titled "Turkey to Search Saudi Consulate for Jamal Khashoggi. Riyadh open to examination of consulate," Turkey's foreign ministry says, a week after disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi, written by Umit Uras on October 9th. Article: Istanbul, Turkey. Saudi Arabia will allow Turkish authorities to search the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, the Turkish foreign minister said, a week after the disappearance of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi during a visit to the premises. Saudi authorities let us know that they are open to cooperation and an examination can be carried out in the consulate building. Hami Aksoy, a foreign ministry spokesperson, said in a statement on Tuesday. Two Turkish prosecutors have been assigned to manage the planned search at the consulate building, state media reported. The date and time of the search have yet to be announced. Khashoggi, a Saudi writer critical of government policies, entered the consulate on October 2nd to handle a routine paperwork issue, but never came out, Turkish authorities say. Anonymous Turkish sources told the Reuters news agency on Saturday there was evidence he was killed inside the building in what they called a premeditated murder. Saudi officials talking to state media have said that the journalist left the consulate after his visit, denying the Turkish claims. The country's crown prince Mohammed bin Salman previously said Turkish authorities were welcome to conduct a search of his country. He had nothing to hide, and his country had nothing to hide. Saudi Arabia's ambassador was summoned to the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs twice in the last week over the issue. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday he has not yet spoken with Saudi Arabian officials about the disappearance of Khashoggi. Trump, speaking to reporters at the White House, said he does not know anything about Khashoggi's disappearance and that he will speak with Saudi officials at some point about the situation. Support for Khashoggi. Since the disappearance of Khashoggi, activists and journalists have gathered by the Saudi consulate in Istanbul almost every day in the last week to rally in support of the missing writer. Leman Yurtsever, a protest organizer and board member of the Human Rights Association in Turkey, said on Tuesday that they gathered by the diplomatic mission to defend the rights and safety of journalists. We do not care from which country the threat and moves against press freedom and human rights come from, be it Saudi Arabia or any other one, she told Al Jazeera. Forced disappearances are cases against human rights, and we are here to condemn this crime committed against a journalist, Yurtsever said. If we do not show any reaction, we can be the next one disappearing. Sharif Diab, an Egyptian activist who's attended a rally outside the consulate on Monday, told Al Jazeera that they gathered to find justice for Khashoggi, condemning Saudi authorities. People disappear in the Middle East's authoritarian countries all the time. We see it in Syria. We see it in Egypt. We see it in the other ones. However, a descendant getting lost in a foreign mission is taking it one step further, he said. If we do not show any reaction, we can be the next one disappearing, he added. Khashoggi, a self-exiled writer for the Washington Post, was reportedly visiting the consulate to acquire the papers to prove that he was divorced. He was planning to get married to his Turkish fiancée, who waited outside as he entered the consulate. She was the first person to report that he never came out of the building. The consulate's security camera visuals of Khashoggi on that day show him going inside the building, but there was no footage of him coming out, according to the Turkish authorities. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in reference to the case, said on Monday that Saudi officials have the responsibility to prove the whereabouts of the missing writer. The relevant Saudi authorities were responsible to prove of their claim on this matter. If he left the consulate, you must prove this. You will prove this, even if it's with visuals. Those who ask Turkish authorities where he is should first be asking, how did this happen? Erdogan said during a press briefing in Hungary. This is very important. They went to another, well, per other articles, this Turkish consulate, not Turkish, but Saudi Arabian consulate, if they did kill this journalism in a foreign country in their consulate, that's serious.
Well, I think they invited him in to they being Saudi Arabia invited Turkey to him into the consulate to investigate, but which is unusual to investigate someone's consulate. I haven't heard anything back since about it. They said he has to come back out. There's only so many ways there's only so many things you can do with a human being to make him disappear. I just don't know. But what I will say is that Saudi Arabia has been going after everybody who's in opposition or may seem like they're in opposition to the monarchy itself, to the kingdom itself, because their political structure is very fragile, which is why a war with Iran would be catastrophic for them. It would send their society into a tizzy overnight, because they don't have the ability to sustain all those people who are in opposition to the kingdom itself. It's not like the United States where you have parties that are divided. They don't have a democratic process in their country, and their stability thrives off of non-democratic institutions such as a kingdom itself. So when you have a journalist that is speaking out against them or says something that is not consistent with toting the line for the kingdom itself, things will happen. And unfortunately, this person was seeking refuge in the United States and was actually going to get married, and was going inside the consulate to actually get paperwork, to marry the woman. And it turns out that he, that didn't work out too well for him. And the woman that he was going to marry was actually Turkish.
Mm-hmm. Any other points?
Complex?
No, I was just listening in on this one, man. Real interesting stuff.
Okay. Yeah. This could actually set off a war if this charge is pressed against Saudi Arabia. Any sort of criminal justice that would be used against Saudi Arabia would actually be a diplomatic spat between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, as well as Qatar, because there's still a blockade on Qatar. Qatar can actually use this to their leverage. Turkey could use it to their leverage. We have to keep in mind that Turkey is not in line with Saudi Arabia anyways. Turkey supports the Muslim Brotherhood, especially under Recep or Erdogan, um, as well as Qatar supports the Muslim Brotherhood. Um, Saudi Arabia does not. They are Wahhabi and they support Al Qaeda. So when you have these warring factions on the ground as being used as proxies, what that's doing is starting to cause conflict. And now you have a journalist who is seeking refuge being snatched up off the street by Saudi enforcement. You're going to have some major issues between the two.
Yeah, because if this is true and they kill just a person on Turkish soil, that's like saying, okay, you can kill anybody on our soil. I don't care if it's your citizen. You did it on our soil. That's not something to say oh well about. That's something serious.
Right, and keep in mind that keep in mind that Turkey has all the cards working in their favor because it's on their soil. So if they want to launch a full investigation, they can actually go ahead and do it, which is, I think, something that they've already started the process on. Now, Saudi Arabia is basically saying, well, you can come in and search Saudi Arabia, and I can reassure that he's not here. Of course, he's not there, you dickheads. He was last seen
No.
inside the consulate. Preem, you have anything on this?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, we can move on to the next article.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen once again. All right, the last article comes from RT.com. Title: Russia will fight other nations' attempts to contain its activities in global arena. Prime Minister. All right, written October 9th. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has said Russia will not hide behind protectionist barriers as the world becomes more turbulent and competitive. The country will fight for a dominant place in the global economic system, he said. Medvedev outlined Russia's position concerning current international and political relations in an extensive article published in Economic Issue magazine. Quote, every time our country actively positions itself in the international arena, it counters harsh attempts to hinder these steps. We cannot ignore any tendencies of this kind, and we will actively fight for a decent place in the global political and economic systems. End quote. The head of the Russian government also stated that the acute politicization of international economic relations had resulted from a period of general turbulence caused by a wave of technological and social changes. He said that trade wars and politically motivated sanctions had already become a reality that has to be reckoned with. However, Medvedev emphasized that Russia would not isolate itself from the global economy in a bid to avoid turbulence. Quote, Russia will not create barriers for international economic relations. We will not close ourselves from the international markets or ignore it. We will broaden Russia's participation in international trade, building our own chains of added value and participation in economic unions and agreements. End quote. The Russian PM said that the next 6 years would determine the limits of possibility for Russia and the country's future role in the global economic and political systems. He also outlined two major principles that, in his view, would help the nations to assume a decent position, social stability, and a high level of trust between the state and its citizens, as well as high mobility in society in general, the ability to adapt to new conditions and change new challenges. So that's pretty spot on. They're saying they will not be hindered, and every chance that I'm just reiterating what the article said. Every chance that they try to elevate Russia, they they've met opposition, and it does seem that way.
Yeah, I wish black people would take the same exact position as the Russians and say if you make any attempts to stop us from, rising to power, that we'll fight everybody. Fuck it.
I was gonna say something, but I hold my tongue.
Yeah, yeah, but Russia still has a lot of cards to play with in terms of economic and political situation. We just saw them make a huge deal with India today or yesterday, $5 billion worth of surface-to-air missiles from the S-400 missile system. So there's still a lot of wiggle room for them to play with, and I think going forward, you'll start to see Russia participate in areas that typically the Chinese have usually played around in, especially in places like Africa. Al Jazeera has a new piece coming out tomorrow about Russia's role in Africa. What is it that the Russians are looking for? Russia is not stupid. Putin is not stupid. The oligarchs are not stupid. They're in the Central African Republic and Sudan, and they're looking for resource stability. Russia has a lot of resources by itself. It has all the resources that Africa has for whatever reason. I'm not sure why they seem to have it, but they seem to have the similar resources, except for like cobalt. But they do have a lot of zinc and what do you call that? Iridium. They have iridium in Russia too. Large deposits of it. So, which is probably why their space program is so successful, because they have access to the resources. But I think what they're going to do in Africa as a pivot is actually solidify themselves by helping leverage, not helping to leverage, but helping to elevate a lot of the African countries who are in need of institutional and academic upliftment. I don't think they're going to dump a whole lot of money into it, but they did dump a lot of technology into Africa, and I think I spoke about this before, that they've dumped something called GLONASS, GLONASS, which is Russia's version of a GPS system, global positioning system. The technology is good for continents or countries that have a more north-south position rather than an east-west position. The United States is very broad, so it's east-west, and Africa is very, I think it's longitude, or I think it's latitude. It's north to south. So that sort of technology was used in Africa to actually pinpoint a lot of the positions on the continent itself. Complex, you have anything you want to add?
No, man. I was actually just listening in on what you were just saying there. No, interesting stuff.
Yeah, I see Russia making bigger plays. The Spratly Islands, or I think it's called the Sparrow Islands. They took from the Japanese in World War II. Putin has reached out to President Abe of Japan, and basically said, we'll share the resources there. You won't get the islands back, but we'll share the resources.
Yeah, no, you were just, I think we were just talking about that actually a couple of hangouts ago about that. And I know also we had covered maybe some weeks ago that whole energy pact that they did in the Caspian with all of the STAN countries. It was Russia, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan, and all the rest of them. So yeah. So I mean, these are all just interesting geopolitical maneuvers when you take a macro view at it.
Yeah, and just like the article states, any attempts to try to suffocate Russia, would cause a conflict. It's going to cause some form of conflict. And Russia is not Syria. You can't just fly in there and make military bases and cause disruption. They will fight back. They proved that in 2008 when Georgia, the state of Georgia, tried to take the tried to take the villages away from the Russian citizens who were there, and the Russians hit them so hard that the United States wasn't even ready for that. You know, they sent a cyber attack that basically shut down all of their communications within the country itself. No TV broadcasting, no telephone, no cell phone, no internet, nothing. You're offline. Your whole country is offline. And while you're offline, all the tanks are rolling into your city.
Jeez.
Yeah, they're nothing to be played with. You know, they showed that in 2008. They are nothing to be played with. They'll go in there and shut shit down.
That's the truth.
That conflict lasted 7 days before the Georgian president had to call the United States. I want to say it was Condoleezza Rice. Condoleezza Rice had to come in and kind of fix that problem.
Was that wasn't the situation with South Ossetia? Was that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. That's the one. Okay, I recall. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that Atlanta was going to war, and it's like that's the wrong Georgia.
Green was the lieutenant commander. All right.
Red Dawn, baby, Red Dawn.
I know we want to put this last article on, so pinned it to the.
Yeah, we got time. I think the hangout's supposed to end at 11 o'clock. We got time.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hoping Noah can make it back. I know he had an article. I don't know if we have the link. I think he was going to bring it up.
Did you all want to get to the article or pontificate more about what we?
I don't know. I don't know what article that was that he had. He mentioned it before he dropped off. He said he was.
No, it was an article that I got that I have.
Oh, okay. Were we gonna wait for him, or are we gonna just kind of talk about other things?
No. Let's spend a few seconds. Just go to the chat.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. I forgot, man, because we got more subscribers and stuff, and people are actually chiming in.
Yeah. It's great. People are chiming in a chat room. We up to recently we were used to the same old people there. Not to say that's bad. Our core, and not having to scroll up or scroll down in the chat just to see who said what.
Yeah, we're not used to that. This is something new. So let me see. Zove Royalty says, as long as Russia are joined at the hip with China, they will be fine in the long run. That's true to a certain extent. The problem is that China doesn't have the same resources that Russia has. They don't produce their own oil, so they're very oil dependent upon everybody, whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, whether it's Venezuela. They're very dependent on energy, something that they just don't have. And the United States government knows this, and that's why they've been practicing maneuvers in the South China Sea to simulate a blockade. Now, the last time they formed a blockade, a maritime blockade in any ocean, you had Pearl Harbor. They cut the Japanese off from oil shipments and put a blockade in. And what happened was the Japanese came back and took out.
They sent the planes in.
Took out their. They came in with heavy artillery and just took out everything that the United States had in Pearl Harbor. So, and that led to World War II for the United States on the West. So, I don't know how far the United States thinks they want to go with this. If you cut off China, or you play around with China, you're going to play around with Russia too, because Russia and China both share a border. They both share waters with each other, not the South China Sea, but the East China Sea. That can, that could be catastrophic for the United States. You're in Okinawa.
I was going to say, and they do share a bit of a brain and muscle man type of arrangement.
Mm-hmm. Right. And people are more modernized now. You know, the Eurasian theater is a lot more modernized now. So everybody has weapons, everybody has technology. You know, people are living well for the relative to the rest of the world. They're living pretty well. They like their they like things working the way how it is. And if you come in there and cause a conflict, everybody's going to point the finger at the United States. You know, they're not going to say, well, maybe it was Trump or maybe it was Nikki Haley or no, they're going to point the finger at everybody. And now you're up for you're up for you're the next target basically.
Mm-hmm.
You're a long way from home. You're a long way from home.
Well, I mean, you know, you know, we spoke to this just a couple of nights ago, you know, with regards to the fourth industrial revolution, how things shift and change globally. And, you know, all countries that have some sort of sizable amount of power on, in the world are looking at where they are looking to position themselves, say, over the next 20, 50, 100, 250, 200, 250, 500 years, maybe even. Okay. So, you know, now is that opportune time where people really do have that opportunity, the position, the technology, that everything is there to kind of position themselves, right? It hasn't been like this. Well, hell, I'm only 41, so never in my lifetime. I mean, hell, like a lot of the stuff that's afforded to us hasn't up until this point has never been available to us. So I see why there is just a global reassessment of everyone's position on the chessboard, you know, and no one's going to take their position lightly, especially someone like Russia, dude, is vast and as resourceful as that country is. No, I can't see Putin doing that.
Yeah, I mean not Russia, but America doesn't have the same muscle that it did, let's say 25 years ago. It's just not the same anymore. You know, things changed since 2007, 2008.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
Countries have gotten stronger. You know, everybody else has been in the gym while the United States has been slacking off. The United States has a bear belly right now, and I don't think you're in any condition to shoot the fair one with anybody.
Mm-mm.
I agree.
Let's go on to your article. I know.
All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Excuse me. All right. Our next article comes from ZeroHedge.com. Title: Pakistani Poker. Playing Saudi Arabia against China. Written on October 7th. Desperate for funding to fend off a financial crisis, fueled in part by mounting debt to China, Pakistan is playing a complicated game of poker that could hand Saudi Arabia a strategic victory in its bitter feud with Iran at the People's Republic's expense. The Pakistani move threatened a key leg of the $60 billion plus Chinese investment in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, a crown jewel of Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. They also could jeopardize China's hopes to create a second overland route to Iran, a key node in China's transportation links to Europe. Finally, they grant Saudi Arabia a prominent place in the Chinese-funded port of Gwadar that will significantly weaken Iran's ability to compete with its Indian-backed seaport of Chabahar. Taken together, the moves risks dragging not only Pakistan but also China into the all but open war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Pakistan's first move became evident in early September with the government's failure to authorize dis, dis, disbursements for road projects already hit by delays in Chinese approvals that are part of CPEC's western route, linking the province of Balochistan with the troubled region of Xinjiang in northwestern China. In doing so, Pakistan implicitly targeted a key Chinese driver for CPEC, the pacification of Xinjiang's Turkic Muslim population through a combination of economic development enhanced by trade and economic activity flowing through CPEC, as well as brutal repression and mass re-education. The combination of Pakistani and Chinese delays has virtually brought progress work on the Western route to a standstill, a Western diplomat in the Pakistani capital of Islamabad said. Pakistani Railways Minister Sheikh Rashid, in a further bid to bring Pakistani government expenditure under control that at current rates could force the country to seek a $12 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, has cut $2 billion from the $8.2 billion budget to upgrade and expand Pakistan's railway network, a key pillar of CPEC. Mr. Rashad plans to slash a further $2 billion. Pakistan is a poor country that cannot afford the huge burden of the loans. CPEC is like the backbone for Pakistan, but our eyes and ears are open, Mr. Rashad said. The budget cuts came on the back of Prime Minister Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or PTI, party projecting CPEC prior to the July 25th election and swept him to power as a modern day equivalent of the British East Indian Company, which dominated the Indian subcontinent in the 19th century. PTI criticism included denouncing Chinese funded mass transport projects in 3 cities in Punjab as a squandering of funds that could have better been invested in social spending. PTA activists suggested that the projects had involved corrupt practices. Pakistan's final move was to invite Saudi Arabia to build a refinery in Gwadar and invest in Balochistan mining. Chinese questioning of Pakistan's move was evident when the Pakistani government backed off suggestions that Saudi Arabia will become part of CPEC. Senior Saudi officials this week visited Islamabad and Gwadar to discuss the deal that would also involve deferred payments on Saudi's oil supplies to Pakistan and create a strategic oil reserve close to Iran's border. The incumbent government is bringing Saudi Arabia closer to Gwadar. In other words, the hard-line Sunni Wahhabi state would be closer than ever to the Iranian border. This is likely to infuriate Tehran, said Balak, politician and former Pakistani port and shipping minister Mir Hasil Khan Bizingjo. Pakistan's game of poker amounts to a risky gamble and serves Pakistani and Saudi purposes, puts China, whose prestige and treasure are on the line, in a difficult spot. Could perilously, could perilously spark tension along the Pakistan-Iran border, and is likely to provoke Iran's counter moves. It also risks putting Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and Iran, who depends on China economically in different ways, in an awkward position. The Saudi engagement promises up to $10 billion in investments as well as balance of payments relief. It potentially could ease U.S. concerns that a possible IMF bailout would help Pakistan service debt to China. This is a longish article. Um, do you all want me to continue? Because I believe that it could me continue could further
No,
lose
no,
people.
I think no, I think we
No, we
got
can
the
synthesize it. Yeah, we can synthesize it.
yeah. It's a plausible. It's plausible that Pakistan would do something like this. The thing is, Pakistan has a long relationship with Saudi Arabia because one of the I believe it was a former king before he died said that king of Saudi Arabia before he died said that he would, if he wanted to, he can get his nuclear weapons from Pakistan. This was maybe about 8 years ago or something like that. So there's always been rumors that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia were in bed with each other. I mean, they're all a part of the OIC, which is Organization of Islamic countries or something to that effect. Basically, Pakistan is broke and they need more leverage. They need more financial leverage against India because India is a powerhouse. I think we discussed this on Monday. India is a #1 powerhouse in terms of information technology and services. So they have the human capital to compete against somebody like against their neighbor Pakistan. Pakistan hasn't really done anything. And if you look at Pakistan in certain areas, they don't even have electricity, and there's a lack of governance in these areas. So what's happening is you have these terrorists flowing in and out of Pakistan and Afghanistan that are causing disruption, for Chinese nationals. I wouldn't put it past Saudi Arabia that they could be involved in picking off some of these Chinese nationals on the back end, causing disruption for these oil pipelines and ports development. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mike, just to kind of speak to what you were saying with regards to China's industrial exports versus Pakistan's. I mean, you can even throw EVs, electric vehicles, in the mix. A lot of the Mahindra, I think that's the company. So a lot of the scooter and electric bike rideshare services that are going on in the Midwest and stuff like that, I think it's Mahindra who's supplying a lot of the EVs for that. And as far as Pakistan goes, I mean, they're still doing a lot of garment production, but I don't really see a lot of, I don't really see an uptick in terms of like the GDP or the value in garment production in Pakistan. So, yeah, economically, India does have a sizable advantage.
I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, Zo Royalty says.
Zo's been going in, man. Zo's been dropping some jewels in the chat.
Yeah, Zo is basically saying that Pakistan has 30 million Shiites inside the interior, and if Iran wanted to, they could destabilize Pakistan. Iran doesn't have any interest in destabilizing Pakistan because it's not to their benefit to have a house burning next to their house, so to speak, right? So they need stability within the region, and Iran is the powerhouse within the region anyway. So if anything was to go down, you need Iran to actually be the pillar of stability there. If Iran is destabilized, then everybody else in the region is going to feel it. So it's in everybody's best interest to make sure that Iran is stable, and as well as Pakistan is stable. You don't really want a unstable Pakistan because it will turn into another Afghanistan, and that's not what you want. India doesn't like that either. India needs a stable Pakistan as well. Let me see. Saudi Arabia only has cash, but their foreign reserves are being burned fast because Mohammed bin Salman is spending the money on expensive war in Yemen and defense spending. Well, they have to park their cash somewhere, right? They have to park their cash somewhere. They're paying the United States. They're paying the United States for security, and the United States is basically saying it's not really the United States government. It's really the lobbyists in Washington and in the State Department that work for Lockheed, work for Boeing, work for McDonnell Douglas. All of these companies want to sell weapons and vehicles to the kingdom, because the kingdom has for what it is, it's fragile. Yeah, well, they have cash, but it's also fragile because if anything happens to Saudi Arabia, it's game over within a few weeks. Because all Iran has to do is close off the Straits of Hormuz, and if they wanted to launch surface-to-surface missiles into Aramco and shut down their facilities, they're screwed. Because you have to remember, 85% of Saudi Arabia is all desert. It's not actually sustainable living.
Yeah, and then add on top of that, you've got dissenting journalists. You got said dissenting journalists being assassinated, which, in my view, is basically just if you've got journalists reporting it, that's probably a reflection of the sentiment of the people. And so picking off said journalists quells that to some extent, or that's probably been what the effect largely has been when the Saudis have done it. I don't know what kind of effect that's going to have now because based on a lot of the news that's been coming out, this has largely been looked down upon, from a global standpoint. So, the Saudis found themselves in a very precarious position, let's just say.
You also have Canada cutting off relations with Saudi Arabia as well.
Yeah, there's that whole thing. We talked about that, what was it, like a month ago or something?
Yeah, right. The ambassador did not like what they were seeing in Saudi Arabia in terms of human rights, and basically was calling them out for it. And the kingdom didn't like that either. So the relations are cut.
Didn't they kind of quasi threaten them? If I recall, we have to dig that up. But I think even the Saudi kingdom even kind of quasi threatened Canada over that.
Right, they threatened a 9/11 attack on Canada.
Yeah,
what are they going to do? Yeah. What are they going to do realistically? Are they going to tip over a moose or something like that, or knock off a Mountie?
Some Mounties.
Yeah, give me all your Canadian bacon right now, damn it.
Right. Yeah, dude, that was some wild stuff. Dude, that was probably a month and a half ago. Yeah.
Well, you got to remember that Canada is a pretty weak country, security-wise, anyways. They don't really have that. They don't really have the sort of instability that the Middle East has. But they're not a gun-loving country, right? They're not like America, where there's 300 million guns around and there's protection in most of your big institutions.
For the amount of land that's there, there's the amount of people in Canada, per capita, for the amount of land there, man. Canada is a large country. I don't know if people really know this, but Canada is a large country, and it's largely uninhabited, or if it is in the very, very, very rural area, it's inhabited by First Nations people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually an interesting article. I work with Pakistani in cybersecurity, so I can tell you, talking to them, they're very dissatisfied with the government. They don't like the way things are going. There's a lot of ghettos inside Pakistan that are unnecessary. Lack of governance in certain areas, lack of utility, clean water, electricity. Even me just sitting down talking with a couple of them, we were on eBay looking up wind turbines, so that he can bring, he's saving up enough money so he can, he can bring electricity back to his village where he's from, and looking on eBay, looking at wind turbines and solar panels and things of that nature. They, generators are a big market over there. Everybody, in their houses have some form of generator, whether it's a small one or a big one. Water tanks and stuff like that. So Pakistan is really not politically unstable, but they're socially unstable, in that they don't have enough resources around all the people that are there.
Yeah, and they don't really have strong infrastructure, right?
I think Lionel might be asleep.
Or is he talking to Google again?
No, I hit the do something real quick. I hit the mute.
All right.
But I was listening to you all. That's sad about Pakistan. All them ghettos. Come on, man. At what point?
Well, you have to.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, keep in mind that they broke off from India. 50 years ago, 55 years ago. So they had a tumultuous struggle going back. There was or not going back, but breaking apart, separating from the subcontinent of India. So it's not uncommon that they had a recent war in 1999, the Cabrile War, I think that's what it was called. There's a whole lot of investment that needs to be made into Pakistan. But Pakistan is just like North Korea, right? You're supposedly poor, but you can have you have a nuclear technology program in place. I find that very interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can eat uranium.
You better not.
Not for breakfast.
That's not a good meal. But
it's for the dinner menu.
But I was going over different countries, more countries. I don't know why this is, but different countries have their priorities in order. They know that you can't take on someone militarily when your people don't have electricity, don't have the means of basic transportation, don't have food, don't have these basic human comforts. But right, but yet you trying to fight a war with another country that's, and at the very least, a little bit better, their citizens a little bit better than you. That doesn't make sense. I don't understand what position these leaders are coming from when they think this.
Because they're willing to sacrifice all of their Pookies and Ray Rays. They're willing to sacrifice that.
Oh, I was about to say something else.
The people who are eating and eating 3 meals a day and wearing designer clothes, trust and believe those people are extension of the ruling families, the oligarchs and the political leadership there. But everybody else, it's a sort of a 2-tier caste society where if you're not a part of this group, you're on the losing end. I can only say in America, that's not 100% the case, right? I mean, I would say that most black people, let's say in Chicago, probably live better than people in Pakistan, right? But you still have many other issues in Chicago that are not there in Pakistan. Because the difference between Pakistan and Chicago is that people in Chicago just have a lack of opportunity, but they still are sustained with food stamps and other government subsidies. Whereas in Pakistan, they don't have government subsidies like that, right? You have cows and things like that that you have to actually go out and milk, and chickens and stuff like that. But everybody has a Kalashnikov. So if you think about you're gonna go in somebody's house and get and rob them, that that can be a rude awakening for you.
Right.
Catch an AK to your head.
It's not gonna work.
Over a goat.
Daddy.
I just don't understand. And I understand that they willing to sacrifice, but in the long run, you're just gonna play that over and over again. And to me, it doesn't work out right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, depends on how you want to develop your people, right? We look at places like Cuba, and they've had sanctions on them, blockades put on them, but yet they still seem to keep graduating doctors, right? Doctors and nurses. They're very strong in this area, and I would say that they're stronger in the biomedical field than even probably United States, because the way they spend their resources a lot more efficiently because they have to. So they have to pursue higher education and put out better human capital per capita in their country, because they are very dependent upon that. And what Cuba does is they send their people into other countries in exchange. Those countries send oil and other bartered items back to Cuba.
I was going to say, aren't there medical professionals accredited in other countries, like in Europe and stuff like that? Like you go to Cuba to get your medical credentials, you could then from there, if you wanted to, head off into other South, South or Central American countries or Europe.
Yeah. Cuba sends their doctors to Venezuela in exchange for barrels of oil. That's the sort of barter system that they have in place. And their people are willing to go. So you see, Cuba has their own Doctors Without Borders, basically. Before Doctors Without Borders was Doctors Without Borders. So they were the first ones to really start doing that type of stuff. They will send their people on the expedition. When the levees broke in New Orleans, they wanted to send their doctors and nurses up to
they sure did
up to New Orleans, and Bush basically gave him the middle finger and told him to take a hike.
Told him turn around and go back. Yep.
What'd you say, Mike?
Right. That's when Kanye came out and basically said, Bush does not like black people. A lot of people say, Kanye's crazy, but in the reality was he was really saying something more. I'm not giving Kanye any credit, but I'm saying he was saying something relevant at the time. And when you have a country like Cuba who's already poor saying that we'll send our human resources up there to come help, and you have a country that has all the power saying, no, we don't want your help. But you see a whole lot of black people drowned in New Orleans, which is a tragedy. So to Lionel's point, countries have their priorities set up differently. In the United States, the government ignores black people while at the same time expecting to send aid to other countries. You're not even sending aid to your own people here.
Yeah.
Veterans living on the street. There's a whole litany of issues.
Oh, boy.
Let's check the chat, see what's popping in here. The best way to get out of poverty in Pakistan is joining the military, which is why they have a large military. That's true to a certain extent. They have a large military because they're worried about India. Their neighbors are coming in and invading them, so they need a large military. But Pakistan has actually been working with the Chinese to develop different industries in Pakistan, and I find it interesting that you're smart enough to develop nuclear technology, but you're not smart enough to develop information technology for yourself. I just find that to be very interesting. Why is India so successful at what they're doing and you're not?
Yeah. It like you said, if you're smart enough to do that, you should be smart enough to design a way to feed your people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I don't have anything else. At least not on the docket for tonight. I think we cleaned up the docket pretty well.
All right. Any other comments on any of the articles that we said, or anyone else?
I don't have anything else. The chat looks. I think we caught up with the chat. I will say. I will put this out there. Saturday, I'm going to host a Brain Trust military talk on Saturday night for about 90 minutes. Have some videos and stuff that I want to go over.
That's pretty good. I would attend that one.
Mm-hmm. So Saturday night from 9 to 10:30, we'll host our own military talk.
All right.
We'll be back on Friday with the economics. So that should be episode 73.
Economics Friday. Yeah. I got some things I want to go over also. I'm sure Dollar will attend. Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, we're going to close out. You all have a good night.
All right. See y'all later.